Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain, and we have reached the end game. I am here tonight to talk about As the World Burns and Against Time, the epic 2-episode finale event for Quantum Leap, season finale event for Quantum Leap season 2. And it has been a long day. It's been a long week. It's been a long while. I won't go into all the details, but as a lot of you will know, if you've been watching and listening for a while, I've been understudying a show. I've been cast in another show that started rehearsals. I started a new little part-time job at this game store that I really love. In addition to, of course, the parenting and the spousing and of course, Fate's Wide Wheel. And Fate's Wide Wheel today alone, I have had the pleasure, the great gift of being able to chat with Drew Lindo and Dean Georgeris about Against Time. And I just got through chatting with Derek Hughes and Benjamin Rabb about As the World Burns. I'm so grateful to all four of them for giving their time so that I could have those interviews for you post show Tuesday night, February 20th, after these episodes have aired. It's pretty incredible. I have nothing but gratitude for the entire team. Certainly Dean and Drew for what they were able to do for me and some others in order to get us access to these episodes early, so that we could put this stuff out there and talk about the incredible achievement of season 2 as a whole, and have these episodes immediately following air so that conversation could just be kicked into high gear right away. You don't have to wait for me or Quantum Leap podcast to have seen these episodes along with you. We got the chance to see them early, and I am so grateful for that. Thank you so much for making that possible, and thank you all for being here, because it has been a journey, to say the least. And as I record this, it is 10:05 p.m. Chicago time. And I am going to attempt the impossible, which is to record this review in about an hour and then edit and upload all of the rest of everything that I have to do, so that you will be watching this, or can, if you so choose, watch this immediately following the airing of these 2 phenomenal episodes. As you can probably tell by what I've been saying, I loved them. So that's the short review. Have a nice night. See you later. No, I will talk a little bit more in depth, but I do have every intent of going back and kind of doing some conversations about these episodes, maybe in a little bit more depth. And I know that JJ Lindell and I will certainly do that. So if you feel like there's something I've missed along the way, don't fret, because it will probably come back to it. Speaking of JJ Lindell, if you've not yet seen his phenomenal posters for these final 2 episodes, please head over to any social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Go to @JJ and you'll be able to see those designs, or just head over to jjlindell.com/FWW shop and you can see those posters. You can pre-order those posters right now if you so choose, and hang them on your wall. Obviously I'll be doing that myself. So, and of course, not only will you be, collecting an amazing piece of artwork and supporting JJ, but you'll also in a small way be supporting the podcast as well. There is, of course, the Fates Wide Wheel Patreon. Now, before I talk about the Patreon, I always, of course, would mention that we need to make sure that we are setting right the wrongs in our world in any way that we can. Just a little bit of kindness, just a little bit of something will have that ripple effect. It'll touch one life and another and another and another. And we have the chance to do that in the same way that Ben Song or Sam Beckett has done that. And I think that Against Time specifically shows us such a beautiful example of that. So in your own community, if there's something that you can do, whether it's donating some canned goods, some gloves to a glove drive, organizing that glove drive, if you can just donate your time in any way to help someone out, or if you're in a place financially to do so, support your community as you can. In the world at large, of course, the Trevor Project is something that is incredibly important to me on a personal level, and I will always support them in any way I can. They certainly get some of my money. If you're in a place to also donate, go for it. Doctors Without Borders is also another essential charity out there doing essential, horrible, awful work sometimes, and they need all the help that they can get. So They will always, of course, have my backing as well. And finally, on a very personal note for this podcast and for this community, that's Epilepsy Foundation UK, which was a cause that was near and dear to Matt Dale's heart. Matt obviously is someone who looms large for all of us, and certainly over the course of these final couple of episodes, that feeling has been just blown up even in a way. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So please, let's right some wrongs. Let's make the world a better place. We can do that. If after all of that, you still want to support this show, I am grateful. I cannot thank you enough. It is truly humbling that people want to support the show in that way. You can head over to patreon.com/fateswidewheel. Any dollar amount gets you access to everything that's available on there, including all the amazing behind the scenes videos that JJ Lindell and I have done, charting the creation of each of his posters, not only for Quantum Leap, but some of the posters he's created especially for this show, including the awesome Twilight Zone poster, for instance, or the Doctor Who poster, or his incredible Deep Space Nine poster that he did as well. There will be more of that in the future, and I'm really looking forward to April, May, June, July. I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities to go some really interesting places. So stay tuned for that. You are also going to get, if you join now, you're going to get early access to some incredible interviews that I have lined up with the cast and crew of Quantum Leap. You're going to get that at least 48 hours early. So if you want to see some of that stuff before it gets released on YouTube to everyone else, then sign up and you're going to be able to have that early access to some pretty special interviews that I am so excited about, some people that I've not had the chance to speak to yet. So yeah, check those out. Now, of course, even without subscribing, you are going to get all of that. The behind the scenes videos are unique. That's something that JJ and I are doing, but in general, all of the Quantum Leap related content about the show and all of the interviews and everything, that will never be locked behind a paywall. You'll get that on YouTube eventually. So never fear. This is just a way to kind of reward those Patreon members so they can get it a little early. Thank you all so much for listening to that, and thank you all so much for being here. I am in a place right now where I'm just so moved, incredibly moved by the work that has been done on these last two episodes, especially. And I think that there are some emotional highs that get reached that just go beyond the nature of which we normally see on television, especially in the type of stories that that are getting told in general. And I just have to express my thanks on a personal level because of the way that the show has moved me to the team, because the collaboration that has created this stuff has genuinely provided me with a sense of catharsis and a sense of motivation and inspiration and movement, which I don't think that there's been anything else that has done that for me in a while, quite frankly. So I'm grateful to the team that's worked on this stuff. All right. Let's dive in. Let's talk about As the World Burns, written by Benjamin Rabb and Derek Hughes, directed by Pamela Romanowski. This is the penultimate episode of season 2, and we get just some incredible stuff. And right away, it doesn't take long to realize that we are in the apartment of Hannah and Jeffrey Nally. This is post Joshua's passing tragically due to the car accident, in spite of Ben being able to warn Josh about the heart condition and having that changed. 600 days later, unfortunately, he dies in a car accident. We don't learn the exact circumstances of which until Against Time, which is fascinating. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So right now, I will say I'm going to talk about 212 kind of in a vacuum, and then I'll give a full spoiler alert and go into 213. So if you're coming to this in the future and you've just gotten into Quantum Leap and you're up to 212 and you're looking for some content and you're like, ooh, I want to check out Fates Wide Wheel's review, I will warn you when it is time to step away and go watch 213 and come back. So let's hit it. I think the setup right away it's just great. Obviously there's this threat of the fire. Yeah, I think the tension is built in, pretty quickly. That it gets put out. There's a comedic moment there where Ben doesn't really know what the hell to do. Jeffrey kind of has to, direct him to what to do. There's a guy on the floor who is he dead? Is he not dead? No, he's not dead. He's one of the neighbors. He's a science teacher. He's been helping Jeffrey out. Jeffrey clearly, is of high intellect and curiosity, and he's working on building this computer basically. It's a wonderful scene, and it's a wonderful moment between Ben and Jeffrey, and then of course Hannah comes in, and things just get kicked up a notch from there, right? And then there's the explosion, the building is on fire. what's going to happen. And I think that setup is just so well done. And right off the bat, we get some amazing stakes. We realize that, Hannah's along for the ride. This is Jeffrey, a few years older than when we last saw him and Off the Cuff. And, the stakes immediately feel pretty high, and of course Addison is there trying to kind of like help figure things out as well. I think that we just get such phenomenal work from everyone involved, whether that is of course Raymond Lee or Caitlin Bassett or Eliza Taylor or Wyatt. I'm so sorry, Wyatt, because your last name is not in front of me right now, but who plays Jeffrey does a remarkable job as well, and it's just really really wonderful work from the folks on the Leap. Back at headquarters, things are spinning off in all kinds of directions. Magic has resigned his post. He's given over the leadership of Quantum Leap to Jen. There's kind of a humorous exchange there, which again, I love the way that in an episode that is so heavy, they're able to inject some wonderful humor. That's something that we talk about a bit, Ben and Derek and I. So make sure you check out that interview. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do these long form interviews. And the fact is I did two-hour interviews today. And that sounds like a lot. And it is a lot. I get it. If people need to break that up over, a few days or whatever, fine. But the fact of the matter is that there is something so special about being able to conduct these long form interviews to really dig deep into everything that's going on behind these episodes. So I would encourage you to check that out. Obviously, there'll be some clips out there as well for some smaller pieces as we go. But yeah, the setup in general and just kind of setting the stakes both at the project and on the Leap as a fallout of what's come immediately before in The Outsider is handled wonderfully. And the way that Jen is given that gift of confidence by Magic, as well as that lesson in sacrifice, is something that I think really sets up beautifully stuff that is coming. And I think that Nanrissa is great, Ernie is great. It's just a really wonderful moment, that sort of transfer there, and really kind of like brings full circle the relationship between Magic and Jen in so many ways. And the fact that we've seen that paternal quality that Magic has for Jen, and the way that Jen looks up to Magic, and the nature of their relationship, and being the two of them being kind of closer in a way than anyone else might be to Magic on the project, which is also fantastic. And I think that it's indicative of the nature of their relationship and the direction that things are going to be going over the course of these next couple of episodes. Obviously the stakes are high at the project now. They know that there's an existential threat to the project, and there has been now, starting in The Outsider, really. And now I think that we've got this opportunity to operate with the tension level ratcheted up, and it's very propulsive to everything that's going to happen throughout the course of this episode, and it matches the Leap tension beautifully. Back on the Leap, there's some wonderful scenes between Ben and Hannah, and I think that we start to kind of get the notion that that this story is coming to an end in a lot of ways, and Hannah will go on to basically explicitly say, this is the last time. I've done the calculations, I've done the math, this is the last Leap we're going to have together. And I mean, even as I'm talking about it, like, it's just kind of feeling like something's releasing inside of me, because I don't want to see her go, and I think that, the work that Eliza Taylor has done in the role, the writing that she's been provided, the way that the direction and the cinematography has just framed her in general, like we've just seen this beautiful, incredible character brought to life, and been so endeared to her, that the idea of her not being around anymore is genuinely sad. And that's a good thing. It's not a sad, oh my God, you're going to ruin the show. It's more just sort of like, what a gift we've been given, and now we get to be sad about that. And I think that it's just a testament to the work that's been done all around. And I just have to say that throughout the course of this episode, when Eliza Taylor was on the show for the Fates Wide Wheel for the first time, she spoke candidly about, her confidence level going into the audition for the role. And as as someone that has had their own confidence issues, I can certainly say that the work that she has done throughout the course of this season of Quantum Leap is phenomenal and just incredible, and a treasure in the landscape of television, quite frankly. And I think that yes, I mean, she's served by excellent writing. Yes, there's been some beautiful direction along the way, but I mean, there's nothing that can take away from the power of her work, and it's just made all the more remarkable, by the fact that, again, as she stated herself, she was kind of having some confidence issues going into the audition for this, and so to turn in just such a wonderful, magnetic performance that has, I think, won so many of us over, is it's wonderful, and so I'm grateful to Eliza for that. And the storyline throughout this episode, and the way that Ben and Derek have written her, there's like this incredible tone, because there are parts of this episode where you do almost wonder, is it's like, does she resent Ben for what's happened? And of course, we learn as the episode goes on that she does not resent Ben at all, and that she's still grateful to him for everything that he's done. But she's in a pretty tough place. She's a widow now. Her son is going through some hard times. They're kind of going through hard times in general, but she's doing some work for the government. I wonder what. It doesn't take us long, of course, to find out that she's the one that's responsible for the DARPA code. I think that a lot of us kind of saw this coming, and I think that that's great. That's okay. It's wonderful, when that is the case. And I think that her being responsible for that, again, is just beautiful, and it's a part of this love story and this romance that's been told. It's just whether it's obvious or not, it feels so right. And I think that again is just, the wonder of this story that's been told over the course of these 13, up to this point, 12 episodes, but 13 episodes as a whole, when you look at season 2. The tension kind of that exists as a result of Jeffrey not being fully on board with anything that's happening. Why is my mom going with the firefighter? Why do we have to leave Dad's stuff behind? What's wrong with you? There's this grieving boy, and again, I think that Wyatt handles that so beautifully, and kudos also to Pamela for her direction and engagement, and then again to Ben and Derek for writing stuff that just feels so genuine and honest, and plays to a certain emotional maturity that might not match the intellectual maturity that this character so clearly has, and it creates this wonderful dynamic between the characters. And I think that Ben is also and Ray, just the scenes that they have together, he's so giving and he's so present. Obviously, I mean, he's just a remarkable actor, but like there's these times when he's in these scenes with Jeffrey, and you can tell there's like there's guilt, there's curiosity, there's expectation, there's hope, there's all of these things that are kind of at play, and it drives towards him trying to reach for some sort of connection to the son of one of the loves of his life, and not being able to necessarily establish that. And part of that might be because he feels guilty, right? And so it's kind of like, just get him safe, and I need to keep Hannah safe. Well, she wants to come with me. Okay, fine, you can come with me. We're adventuring buddies, right? I mean, that's what we've seen from Nomads and from Secret History. And so for them to kind of get to share this leap, this one last adventure together, is bittersweet, to say the least. Back at the project, we get some wonderful stuff with Ian trying to crack the code, quoting the Wrath of Khan. I mean, Mason is a wonder, just simply put, and it's a hilarious moment, and it's certainly a moment that I think that all nerds will be able to connect with very easily. Again, the threat of the fire, and just the idea that the fire, it moves in ways that cannot be predicted, and yet it moves in ways that it has to move, which kind of is really this wonderful contrast to the analogy of time being a river. that we get, in the course of both of these episodes, and fate and sacrifice looming large over all of this as well, to the point that they save the firefighters. They do it through this ingenious kind of MacGyver-esque, plot, and using their science brains, which is something. It's not just MacGyver. I mean, I could easily just say it's a Sam Beckett thing, because Sam obviously, utilized his knowledge at times as well. But, in some ways, not quite like they have, off the cuff. They did it as well, which I kind of neglected to mention earlier, but partly that's because even though they obviously team together and off the cuff, I don't necessarily know that they team as strongly as they do like in Nomad and Secret History. It's a different kind of episode. That's okay. I mean, I enjoyed off the cuff a great deal, but this episode feels a little bit more akin to Secret History and Nomad, for that reason of them getting to really, really team together for a longer period of time. But I love the way that they rescue the firefighters. Shortly after the firefighters are rescued, they realize that Jeffrey's gone back up to get his dad's things. Hannah is saying, like, no, I'm sticking with you. I will not leave you. And there's then the explosion, and it's filmed so well. It's it just hits you like a gut punch. They get behind the doors. They're standing there behind the doors. You can just tell it's coming. It's coming. That tension is ratcheted up, and then bam, there's the explosion, and oh my gosh, what is going to happen? And so much of the episode, there's uncertainty, right? I mean, even earlier in the episode, there's the point where Addison disappears, and Jen has to kind of like steal power from across the street in order to get the imaging chamber back up to snuff, because slowly but surely the project is basically being like eaten away by these external forces. The shadow of Gideon Ridge looming large over all of this, and magic's absence. Magic is gone. What are they going to do in light of all of this? And they're doing the best that they can. After this explosion, we get some of the most incredible scenes of the episode. Not only the argument between Hannah and Ben over who Ben can save. It's like it's either Hannah or Jeffrey, and Hannah impressing upon him, like, you have to save my son. And again, that theme of sacrifice that has been so present throughout the course of this season is just brought into the stark focus, because Hannah is basically saying, I sacrifice myself willingly for my son. And it's beautiful, I mean, of course, right? Of course. But it's handled with such grace and such power that it really works. And Addison's presence, of course, is not lost either, because I think that, she's integral to this, and kind of motivating Ben. And when she stays behind with Hannah, to see these two incredible actors get the opportunity to do this scene together is just, it's one of my favorite Quantum Leap scenes ever, quite frankly, because we know that Hannah cannot see or hear Addison. And yet they have this conversation that makes so much sense within the context of all of that. And it's beautiful, and it's so meaningful. And not only is it beautiful and meaningful, but it starts to tie all of these threads that have been weaving throughout season 2. We've talked about season 2 a lot over the course on Fate's Wide Wheel anyway, about season 2 almost as if it exists in a vacuum. There's been some references to season 1 here or there, obviously helping to inform the relationships and set up the relationship between Ben and Addison, which of course gets torn asunder by the 3-year gap, etc. But so much of the conversation has been formed around season 2 almost being this lone entity. And that's not true, and it's never been true. But what ends up happening here, I think, more than just about any other episode we've had this season, maybe with the exception of like the relationship between Magic and Beth, but in this season specifically, we get these callbacks to start to form to season 1, to the premiere episode, to the idea of quantum entanglement, to the idea that Ben and Addison are bonded together in a way that no matter how far they're stretched apart, it can't be broken. And Hannah articulates this for Addison in this beautiful way. And we've seen over the past couple of episodes the way that kind of everything has been working on Addison, and the way that she is starting to reconnect with parts of herself that, frankly, she's probably been disconnected from since she thought she lost Ben. And it's not just I'm disconnected from Ben, the love of my life or whatever. It's more than that. And it's so true of grief. Grief has a way of causing us to disconnect from ourselves at the expense of connecting with something else. And sometimes, depending on what we're using as coping mechanisms, it can be, drugs or alcohol. It can be, codependency. It can be all sorts of these harmful things. And it can sometimes not be. But in that way, when you start to make those healthy choices, really you're starting to reconnect with yourself so that you don't have to disconnect with yourself in order to connect with something or someone else. And we see, Addison starting to kind of activate in these ways that we haven't seen throughout the season. And I think for me, it really started in 210 in the family treasure. They're in the caverns and she's starting to hear some of these things and listen. And she's really, you could just see, the way that it's working on Addison, and it's just a remarkable performance from Caitlin. I mean, Caitlin is fantastic in that scene where she has nothing to say whatsoever. She's literally just standing there while the others are having a conversation. And Jude Wang does this wonderful thing where, I mean, they intentionally, she focuses on Caitlin, and we get to see the way that all of what's happening is working on her. And then, of course, in The Outsider, I mean, there's some remarkable scenes for her. There's some remarkable scenes for her with Ben. There's some remarkable scenes for her with Tom. There's just some incredible stuff that she gets to do as she is starting to really start to figure some of this stuff out and again, reconnect with parts of herself that have probably laid dormant for 2-3 years. And it's wonderful to see her kind of unfolding in that way and becoming this person. And I mean, she's never been just the hologram, so I apologize for saying it this way, but she's becoming more than just the hologram. And this episode really lifts that up even more. Of course, we learn in this moment as well that yes, Hannah is responsible for the code. Like, she's drawing it out in the ashes. The joy, the hope that Jen and Ian have while they're watching this is also pretty incredible. And now we have the key. Like, we can bring Ben home, right? And of course, we learn later that yes, the nature of quantum leaping is sacrifice. It's not a we can bring Ben home. It's a swap, apparently, and somebody is going to have to swap places with Ben in order for this code to work. Back to the leap, Ben gets to Jeffrey. Again, we have this incredible scene between the two of them. Ben, connecting with Jeffrey about loss. I lost my dad. You don't have to let this eat you up, that sort of stuff. And just being that empathy engine that he is in order to try to save this kid's life. And it's funny because it works. But you can tell that there's still a lot of anger there to this character. You can tell that Jeffrey is still carrying a lot around. And, as we get out to the ledge, again, there's some kind of funny moments before that as as Ben tries to exit the door and they can't go that way. They get out on the ledge. And then Ben uses Josh's words to coax Jeffrey out. And it's a moment where it works, but maybe not in the way Ben thinks it does, right? And they get down, he's rescued, it's wonderful. But Jeffrey has taken something from the house, from the apartment. We see the DARPA file, by the way, in the room as well, which was great. But anyway, he's taken the letter that Ben wrote. And as Ben and Hannah share this beautiful scene where Hannah thanks him. Because again, that we come full circle to that guilt that I was talking about earlier, and that angst, and all of a sudden, like, Hannah thanks Ben for changing her life for the better. Without Ben, she would not have experienced all she's experienced. Without Ben, Jeffrey likely wouldn't even be there, right? And it's a beautiful moment. The music is gorgeous. The flashbacks are so well timed, so well selected, so well edited. It's just a beautiful, beautiful moment. And of course, Eliza is just phenomenal. And it's such a wonderful goodbye. We think that this is the last time that they're going to see each other. This is the last time they're going to see each other, and it's a beautiful goodbye. And in the midst of all of that, we see Jeffrey opening the letter. I think I mentioned on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, that I wondered if somebody else would read the letter, and to see Jeffrey pick it up and read the letter at this point, it's just, what is this going to do? And obviously, he's heard things throughout the course of the episode, right? When Hannah has talked about being, kind of on hard times, Ben is trying to give her stock tips, and Jeffrey overhears all of that, right? He overhears Hannah call him Ben. He sees the nature of their relationship. He's got questions about it. Now he reads this letter, and all of a sudden it crystallizes, and he knows what's going on. And then Ben leaps, and we get this kind of wonderful, final. It's something that we, I know a lot of people have asked about, talked about. I neglected actually to ask Ben and Derek about this, but we get this wonderful moment where we get to actually see what the leap host kind of feels like after Ben leaves, and it's clear that he's definitely out of it, and Hannah just kind of takes over in this matter-of-fact way. You hit your head, let's get you some help. And it kind of drives home the fact that this isn't the first time Hannah's seen this happen. Hannah saw this happen in Secret History. She probably witnessed it in Nomad as well. She definitely saw it in Off the Cuff. So for Hannah, like, this is not the first time she's had to kind of like bring a leap host back, if you will. So it's wonderful the way she kind of just kicks in right away. Back at the project, again, we've learned that the nature of this code means that there's got to be this swap. Before anything can really happen, however, the shit hits the fan, and Gideon waltzes in and, says point blank, the Pentagon has basically given him full control. They kind of do what he tells them to do. And, it's Machiavellian, and then we get this awesome badass moment from Madison slash Caitlin, where she disarms this soldier and then strips the weapon, and it's just really it's a wonderful moment, but unfortunately it's an act of futility, right? Because they got to go. It's the project is now Gideon's, and the journey that we got to go on through the course of this episode is just wonderful, and it's such a great episode of Quantum Leap. I mean, to see The Outsider, which is again a fantastic episode of Quantum Leap, one of my favorite episodes of the show, and then to get this episode, which starts to really pay off so much of what's been built this whole season, while also setting up what's next. It's just great. It's just a great episode. And, again, I did not get the chance to watch it, in a way where it's like I'm watching these two episodes back to back. Really, I did take a little bit of a break between the two, and I did it intentionally. I wanted to be able to take that break, and taking that break, it did not provide me necessarily with the same experience. However, just intellectually, like kind of like going on that journey and thinking about it in that way, it's like, wow, what a fucking gangbusters first hour to get ready for what's about to come. So I thought As the World Burns was fantastic. I loved so much about, the direction, the special effects, the stunt work, just taking this big chance, doing the Towering Inferno, right? And then, of course, again, coming right back to what has been the driving force of this whole season. It's the humanity. It's these characters. It's the emotional plot, which is something that Ben Rabb said on the interview. It's like, that is the core of this show, and it's just elevates everything else around it, and we got such remarkable work from everyone involved, and it's just, you feel the collaboration, just clicking, and so I think that, again, that the journey that Addison has been on, and seeing the work that Caitlin is doing, and just the acting between the lines is so lovely. Again, I mean, it's become old hat for me to talk about Ray, but I just think that, again, the performance here is wonderful. And the way that he is effortlessly, kind of so giving, that these other actors just have so much wonderful stuff, and the way that he listens, and that empathy and compassion that he taps into so easily is just beautiful. And Eliza, again, I mean, my gosh, like, Hannah is such a remarkable character, and I don't want her to go. So it's really a lovely episode. All right. Now we're going to move on to Against Time. So this is the place where I say, if you have not seen 213 Against Time yet, pause this video, go watch it if you're streaming it on Peacock, come back and finish what is about to occur. Because we're going to talk about Against Time, and it's going to be spoilery right from the get-go. So I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds. I'll ramble here for a second. Pause it, go watch now, if you haven't. Okay, if you watched it, okay, if you're watching this night, and you've definitely watched it. But if you're watching in the future, maybe you haven't. All right, you've had enough time, so here we go. Oh my, just... Against Time is perfect to me. It really is. It's one of those things that it just feels like it was written for me, and I don't mean that literally, but metaphorically speaking, like if you're like me, if even if you're not necessarily like me, but just if you love this show in a way that I can certainly identify with, I just cannot imagine that you won't feel like this was written for you, and won't feel like it is just perfect in so many ways. I knew Janice was coming back. I knew it was happening. And so seeing all of the chatter online at times, it was very difficult. And I haven't known long. I've known for like, a week or two, basically, maybe a little bit longer. And okay, longer than that. So, but not too long. And one of the ways that I found out is because Georgina Riley on her Instagram was posting some pictures, and I decided to, put on my Matt Dale investigating cap and dig deep, and realize that she was, on the lot or right next to the lot. And that was enough for me to just kind of make that leap. Sorry. And realize, Janice is coming back. And I am thrilled with the way that she came back. And I'll go into more on that later. But again, very early on in this, we get the team dejectedly leaving the project, not knowing what the hell's going to happen. And then, the A-team van shows up, right? And out steps Janice and Magic, and, I'm here to save your asses again. And it's just great. It's like, yes, this is awesome. Like, now where are we going to go next with HQ? And where we go next is brilliant. And I'll get to that in a second. But to the leap, Ben is now in the race car and trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I've got a race, right? And he's in a time trials, right? And it's a cool scene, and it's set up well. And again, wonderful, wonderful guest stars. We get some great stuff from our guest stars. And I think that, again, that the nature of this episode and kind of like the idea of sacrifice and loss, etc. It's clear that there's some stuff, at play here that fate is kind of giving us, to say the least. And I just thought that it was really wonderful, the way that kind of everything kind of coalesced and started working together. It was great. I don't know. I appreciated so much about the fact that the leap itself did not necessarily right away feel momentous, right? Like it kind of just felt like, okay, this could just be any leap. Like Ben's a race car driver. Okay, his dad is sick. Judson Mills, that's the actor's name. I think he's just perfect in the role. He does such a wonderful job. And you get, you just know who he is. You just know who he is. And again, it's remarkable in a way because you don't get to spend a lot of time with him, right? Because this is a different kind of leap. And so you don't necessarily get to grow the attachment to the character in the same way that we might if it was a longer episode, say like we did with Connie, for instance, played by Nadine Ellis in The Outsider. And yet, there's an attachment. You don't want this guy to die, right? You don't want him to die in his car. And so the idea that the stakes are there for Ben, like this is your mission, this is what you've got to do. But then we get the scene. And there's a lot of these scenes in this episode. But Gideon gets into the imaging chamber, and Gideon goes to talk to Ben. And Gideon is Jeffrey Nally. Gideon Ridge is Jeffrey Nally, and he has been waiting his whole life to do this. And this scene is terrific. James Fain is excellent. Ray is awesome. The way that they play off of one another, the nature of the conversation, the writing, everything about this scene is just fantastic. And I don't think, again, I don't think that the stakes have ever been higher in a way. It's just such it's funny because, I mentioned this and I said this in the interview, so at the risk of repeating myself, but I almost felt like there was something redeemable in Gideon. And I remember thinking to myself, oh yeah, he can be redeemed. And then the scene came along and I was like, no, he is Satan. Like, oh my God. And yet at the same time, it's so easy to know exactly where he's coming from and why. And just that idea that emotionally, he is still that grieving boy who has turned all of this to anger. He's disconnected with himself, as I mentioned earlier, right? Like he is disconnected with himself in order to connect with this rage, this anger, this plot for revenge against Ben Song and Project Quantum Leap, and to use it as he sees fit, and to tell Ben that he's not very good at this. He's not the right person for this job. He shouldn't be leaping. What did he ever do? The idea that the power that could be exerted with this project, etc., and kind of these two poles, right? And it is reminiscent in some ways of the Evil Leaper stuff, right? The idea that what Sam's mission was compared to what Aaliyah's mission was, and yet this feels so much more motivated, quite frankly, than that ever did. It just feels so visceral, that the nature of Gideon's anger and his righteousness over this quest for revenge. So it's just a fantastic scene, and it's one that I hope is talked about a lot over the coming weeks. And then of course it doesn't take long. We get like just one of my favorite scenes, as a classic Quantum Leap fan ever, which is Beth comes in with the coffee. Janice has got the old imaging chamber. She's made some tweaks. It's working. She's got, the server and everything. They're ready to help out. And the question is asked, like, why are you helping us? And Janice is like, you don't know. And then that music plays. If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you will know that music played at the very end of every episode up until, not too long ago when I kind of stopped using the music, which may be a poor choice. I don't know, depending on who you are. This is definitely a full circle moment. And for me personally, to get an on-screen confirmation of a theory that I've had for 20 years, that I've talked about on this podcast, that I talked about in one of our post-show hangouts last season, it's weird, it's like it's not about being giddy for it or wanting to do a victory lap or anything like that. It's nothing like that at all, because I never could have seen this coming. It's just an idea that I had that felt so right. And to know that other people felt that same way was just so lovely, because again, in Mirror Image, Sam sits down and he tells Beth that Al's alive and he's coming home. He's got a story to tell her. I'm going to tell you a story. And we never see, there's an ellipses there. We never see the story, right? And the story that he tells Beth is everything. Everything. Beth has known everything. She knew, that all of this, like, this was the gift. In the same way that Hannah talks about the gift that Ben gave her, this is Beth being like, this is the gift Sam Beckett gave me, my whole family, my 4 daughters, this life with Al, and that music, it's just, it provokes such a strong visceral reaction. I was moved to tears by the whole moment, because it felt like this culmination, this validation as a fan of this show, to have a scene like that, and to have a scene like that served a higher purpose, that wasn't just fan service. I wouldn't have been moved to tears if it was just fan service, if it was just sort of like, hey, let's mention Al and tie this into Mirror Image in some way or whatever. It wasn't that. And it was Yeah, it was awesome. It was just such an incredible moment, and I know it's one that Drew had, had wanted and had an idea for, and it plays so beautifully. Um, the idea that they're going to use this imaging chamber, that they've got to break back into the project because they realize that Gideon is going to use the accelerator. That Jen finds that car, which I cannot believe I forgot to talk to them about, even though I'd already talked off the record to Drew about it, so I'll get to share it here. That car, in case you weren't aware, I knew it like right away. That car is a scale replica of Al's Corvette from A Leap for Lisa. So how's that for a deep cut Easter egg, right? Awesome, just amazing. I think it's actually a Barbie car that they repurposed, which is hilarious. A remote control Barbie car. Anyway, just the whole setup of kind of the renegade team now, if you will, and having to kind of make do. Janice giving Addison the old hand link. Like it's one of those things, to hear people asking for things, why not this? What about this? What about this? Over and over and over and over again. And it's that idea. It's like, if it doesn't serve a purpose, why do it? It means nothing. It's hollow. It's just fan service. So to find a way to do it when it's not, it means so much more. It feels earned. It carries weight. And so to see Addison now holding that hand link, to go in and talk to Ben with that hand link, to knock the hand link on the side, to hear the sound effects from the hand link, all of this stuff that so many people have been talking about for ages. And it's just sort of like, if you can't appreciate this, then everything, then you don't just want these things. You just want to complain. All right. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to say, I know it might not be the kindest thing that I've ever said, but frankly, that's just what it feels like at this point. There are people that love this show, and the people making this show love Quantum Leap, not just their Quantum Leap, but Quantum Leap and the care which went into crafting stuff like that. And to get those earned moments is just fucking awesome. We find out that the racetrack is actually only about 20 minutes away from where Jeffrey and Hannah are currently living. God, time, fate, whoever is clearly, has plotted this course in a way, right? And so the idea is that if Ben destroys the computer that young Jeffrey is working on, then Jeffrey doesn't win the award, that doesn't get the money to invest, doesn't go on to do all of these things, and that's a way to stop Gideon from coming into power and stop Gideon from taking the project over. We get just this phenomenal scene, which again, because of what's come before with Beth and Janice and the ties to MIA, the strain of MIA running through this, that Addison is Beth, right? That Addison is the one that's been left behind. That Addison did the same thing that Beth did, which I said before on this show. We talked about it on this show, that again, that Beth moved on in the original timeline, right? Addison moved on too. And to hear everything that Beth has said, to kind of hear about the life that she had because somebody was able to step in and say, wait for them. And it's again, the agency that Addison is filled with and the way that she's continued to unfold over the course of these past few episodes, and just seeing the work that Caitlin is doing and the way that all of this is moving her. The scene in the car as they race toward Jeffrey and Hannah's house where she apologizes and says she should have waited for him is so, again, it's so earned, it's so impactful. And again, what has come before in this moment that felt equally earned is now informing this scene in this beautiful way. And what's informing that partly is MIA. And it's like that, to tie that in such a wonderful way is just so perfect. And of course, Ben's reaction and Ray's work, that car scene is so good. It's just so good. The writing, the acting, the directing, everything about it is just so wonderful. When Ben gets to Jeffrey's house, actually, before I talk about that, I want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on at the project. Jen, of course, has infiltrated the project, used Tom's badge to do so. She's using the car to kind of distract people. She's at the accelerator. She's going to lock the accelerator down because they realize that Gideon is going to leap. Gideon is going to use the swap code himself to swap places with Ben and then be the leaper. Narissa has gotten such wonderful stuff to do over the past couple of episodes, and I'm so glad because she's so good, and Jen has not had enough to do, and it's hard, when you've got all of this other stuff going on, and that's not to say that Jen hasn't had some remarkable moments throughout the season. Of course she has. There's been some wonderful scenes, and there's been some wonderful infusions of humor, but there's also been some episodes where she doesn't have a lot to do, and so to see these 2 episodes give her so much to do and show the nature of her character completely, in the scene where she sacrifices herself, it's a phenomenal scene. It's so well acted, and of course it's another one of those scenes that we get in the show, that happens due to the nature of the leaps. Sometimes it almost feels like Jen is the leaper here in a weird way, right? Because she's being kind of observed and followed back in the project, the Renegade project, if you will. And the emotional stakes, everyone telling her to stand down, and the idea that she can't do that she's going to sacrifice herself, and Gideon, of course, proving just how far he has fallen, right? How far Jeffrey Nally has fallen, orders her death, and she is shot and she is killed. And we hear it and we see it, and we see her being zipped up in a body bag. And now Gideon is going to, get into that black Fermi suit, and get into the accelerator. Back on the leap, Ben is there. Ben picks up the hammer, and he's going to break this computer. And even before he sees that the computer is called the Joshua, Jeffrey's dad's name, he stops because he knows that that's not the way. That's Quantum Leap. That's what we need. Yes, he could save the day if he breaks that computer. There's always going to be a better way. There's always going to be a kinder way. There's always going to be a more empathetic way. Always. Always. No matter what you think, there's always a better way. There's always a way to sit down and talk it out, to save lives, to save a life, to right wrongs. And the scene that follows with Jeffrey is so remarkable. And Wyatt does great work, but Ray does some of the best work I think we've ever seen him do in this scene. Talking about the loss of his mother, talking about, not having a father there. The emotion, the anger, the visceral, primal anger of time as a thief. It's just one of the most beautifully acted scenes of the whole show. In the way that he is able to convince Jeffrey to give him a chance, to come along, to feel what it's like to save a life. And then again, using that scientist brain, right? And picking up the materials and grabbing everything. And Addison, the clarion call of hey, he's dying, and also of course being Jen is dead. This kid grows up to, and kills Jen. But amidst all of it, the belief that there's a better way to do this, how to save a life. And Ben in this moment, he doesn't just save, Rick Sr., right? Rick Jarrett Sr. here. He doesn't just save Jen, he saves Jeffrey Nally. And in a way he has to, right? Because as Gideon says earlier, you created me. Everything I am, I learned from watching you, it's kind of his responsibility in a way, right? And they race to the racetrack. And they're able to save Rick Sr. And Jeffrey, you see the way that works on him. You see the way that this all comes together. And it's that idea, I can't save every life. Some lives I can't save. There's nothing I can do, but we can save this one today. We can do this. And you just see this kind of this reconnection, Jeffrey Nally reconnecting to himself in that moment, in the same way that I was talking about Addison earlier, that reconnection, that unfolding in that positive manner, and that idea that there will be better days and better ways to go about this. And it's, of course, coupled with this incredible scene of, Gideon getting ready to step into the accelerator. And there's this beautiful moment where we see James's face, and he's kind of taking stock of things. And it's like he can feel the change as well. And then, of course, we get the absolutely brilliant scene, the Renegade Project, where they're all, they're holding hands. They're about ready to be shot down themselves, perhaps. And then the computer shows butterfly effect achieved. And they realize in that moment, sacrifice, it is explicit. I've been talking about this since the end of season 1, that future Ian sacrifices themselves in order to make all of this possible. But we never really got it explicitly shown, right? Here it's explicitly shown. These people are sacrificing themselves for the greater good. And, as the world kind of leaps around them and resets around them, it's beautiful. And, it's funny because I kind of woke up the next day after seeing the episodes and I thought, did they just hit the Star Trek reset button? How do I feel about this? And I was like, no, because what happened is we actually saw characters grow, because we now know what Jen is willing to do, because Jen will always do that. Jen will sacrifice herself in order for the goodness that they are doing to continue, right? Magic will always sacrifice himself for the project to continue, because he believes so deeply in this team that he has assembled. He believes in Jen and Ian and Addison. He believes that they will continue to do the right thing and get Ben home and get Sam home. We got a Sam Beckett mention in this episode, by the way. It's not a cheat, because we still learned so much about these characters, right? We learned so much about these characters, and it was incredible. And we get this, this victory, we get this win, and Gideon Ridge is now, helps fund Project Quantum Leap. He's a donor to Project Quantum Leap, right? Because of course he is. And Drew puts it very eloquently on the interview. It's like all of the things that happened over the course of the season still happen, right? Just without the threat of certain things. It does make me wonder about the nature of Ian and Rachel's relationship. Should have asked that question earlier. Because you get the idea that perhaps their relationship won't be quite as tense, because there's not this looming sort of thing about the chip, right? Like if the chip is freely given, without strings attached, right? You wonder if their relationship actually kind of is a little bit better off, which, I mean, obviously there's the declaration of love that they have and everything. So clearly, again, we know who these people are. It's not like I'm saying that it's going to change their relationship completely or whatever, but they don't have to experience some of that hardship along the way. But all that to say is that it's what it's what has to happen, right? And the fact that it all starts, when you think about it, in Closure Encounters, when Ben walks into that diner and changes Hannah's life. None of this would have happened without that. And so for Ben to kind of get the opportunity to set things right for Jeffrey, for Gideon, it just makes sense in the context of the whole. And it's a really beautiful picture that's been painted over the course of these 13 episodes. But the best is yet to come. They know that this code has got to swap, right? And Addison comes out of the imaging chamber and Caitlin crushes it. This scene is so well done. And it is that final piece of that reconnection. Addison has been, torn down and built back up in this way, to see this character grab that agency and to be so reconnected to herself, and to, and to say, like, I can do this. I was meant to do this. And I am willing to sacrifice, in order to bring Ben home. And this is paralleled, of course, with this beautiful conversation between Hannah and Ben, because, Hannah comes to pick up Jeffrey. So we get to see Hannah again, which is really lovely and such a brilliant idea. And they have this incredible scene. And again, Hannah thanks Ben for the extra time that they were given, because of course we found out earlier in the episode during that Gideon and Ben scene that Josh found the letter and read the letter, which is what I had wondered a couple of weeks ago. What if Josh reads the letter? Well, now we know what would happen. Josh was upset and distraught and angered, and of course, he doesn't understand what's going on here, and he storms out the door into a rainy night and gets into the car, and that's the night that he has the car accident. So of course Jeffrey's going to blame Ben, right? And the idea that Ben can't control where he's going, when he's going, he can't save Josh, right? He just can't do it. But now he gets the opportunity here, and again, as a result of trying to save Josh initially, he sets in motion the events that again create the big bad, right? That create Gideon. And now we get this scene though where Hannah thanks him for those extra days. We got extra time. You gave us more time. And that reminder of, like, I mentioned this earlier, and I don't know necessarily why I'm coming back to it again, but it just feels right. I saw this little clip of Colin Farrell talking with Jamie Lee Curtis about sobriety, and he said two things. He's like, I know there are two certainties in life. We are going to die, and we're going to make mistakes. And what you do about those mistakes, that's another thing. And I think that's, this is the thing here, is that, like, Ben made mistakes for the right reason. And, how do you handle them now? And in this, in this beautiful, beautiful scene that we get between him and Hannah, and Hannah talking about, like, how she worked to bring him home, but to remember that home's not a place, it's a person. And before that, of course, there's this lovely little scene where, he teases her about, I thought last time was the last time we were going to see each other. And, the math being a little off or whatever. I don't think the math was off at all. I don't think the math in this equation was off at all. I think that when Ben stepped into that accelerator, it was a one-way ticket. And I think Hannah knows that. But I think Hannah also knows that she can get him home. And when Addison volunteers to step in the accelerator, she does so, and she's ready. She was made for this now. She has been through the crucible and come out the other side, and now she is galvanized. She is ready to go. And she gets into that accelerator and she leaps. She looks like a 40s film star, like she walked off the set of Casablanca. And there's explosions and people running and screaming. And she turns, and there's Ben. This ending is so perfect, y'all. It's so perfect. And they come together, they hold hands, they embrace. Never let go. I missed you so much. The music that is playing, outro by M83, is perfect. And then there's another explosion, kind of, off stage left, if you will, while everyone else is running off stage right. Ben and Addison share a look. They hold hands and they run towards the fire. Against Time is about as good as it gets for a season finale. It's just brilliant work by everyone involved. The cast, the crew, the production team, everyone. The people doing Caitlyn's hair, putting that lipstick on her. Drew Lindo, Chris Grismer, Raymond Lee, Caitlin Bassett, Eliza Taylor. Just everyone again, it's just so fantastic. Georgina Riley, Susan Dial, Hatton and Rissa Lee, Ernie Hudson, Mason Alexander Park. Everyone is just operating at a level to bring this story home in such a beautiful way. And I was incredibly moved by it on the whole, and themes of sacrifice and loss and grief and hope and kindness and love. I'm sorry, it's just there's nothing else like it on TV right now, and we need this show. We need this show desperately and deeply. And people need to watch this show. And if you're not watching it, it is without a doubt the best show you're not watching. I mean, if you're here, you're probably watching it, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But I'm just very grateful. I'm very grateful to, as a fan of this show. I'm so grateful to have seen and witnessed a season like this, and to witnessed episodes like these. And in spite of all the loss that I've faced over the past year, with my father, and just instability in general, and different forms of trauma, and the loss of Matt, it's hell, even what's happened with this podcast in a way. There's been a lot of loss and a lot of grief, and it would not be an overstatement in any way to say that this show has really helped and been a constant reminder of why it's not only okay, but it's an imperative to try to do the right thing and try to be kind, to try to save a life in whatever way we can, in whatever way that might spiral out. And I thought about Matt a lot throughout the course of watching these 2 episodes. I think about Matt every day. I miss him, and I wish he was here to talk about these. I think he would have loved them. And I'm grateful to have known him and to be able to be inspired by him. I just want to thank everyone who's taken the time to listen and watch. Yes, that means you. And I certainly want to thank everyone that has taken the time to be on this show. There's a lot more to come. Luckily, I've got some wonderful guests lined up, so you're going to hear and see from some amazing folks over the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be a true joy, a true thrill for me. Talk to me Friday, February 23rd around, I don't know, 3:00 Central Time. And then I'll just tell you how incredibly unreal it feels. But yeah, I'm just so grateful for everyone that's taken the time to appear on the show, and everything that they have done to give me this access and to have these conversations. But even without all of that, I have just been so incredibly moved by this season and by these final episodes of the season, and pointing towards a future where, we don't necessarily know about season 3. I remain optimistic about season 3. I just want to shout it from, the tallest of mountains, and talk about how wonderful this show is, and how we need a season 3, and we need to see Ben and Addison leaping around together. We need to see what that's going to look like. We need to, have those adventures. We need to figure out where this relationship goes next, and just see what happens back at the project in light of all of this. We need to see these people again. We need to find reasons to bring some of these folks back. Maybe even Hannah. And I cannot wait to see where that goes. I want to see that so badly. And I want to give a very special thanks to Dean Georgeris, because I think without Dean, so much of this doesn't happen for me. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for everything that he's put into this show. And I'm grateful for, the window in that he's given me over the past 2 seasons. I know this sounds like some sort of ending, and it's not at all, but I just feel like after the journey that we've been on, I just want to express some gratitude. And I want to thank Drew Lindo. Drew is a remarkable human, very special to me, and his work on this episode in particular was just so incredibly moving, and so incredibly helpful and entertaining. It's all been so entertaining at the same time. So yeah, but to everyone who's taken the time to talk to me, to come on the show, to share with the fans, I really appreciate it, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share that all with you. So with all of that said, I just cannot wait for news about season 3. Again, I remain optimistic, and I just think that there are some fucking incredible stories left to be told for season 3 and beyond, and season 4 and season 5 and so on. And this was mentioned to me, that one of the actors said very specifically, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what we can do, and I agree, and that makes it all the more remarkable because what has been done is phenomenal. So there you have it. In a word, I think that these episodes are phenomenal, and I always want to know what you think, so please feel free to leave a comment below. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. If you're listening over on any of the podcast platforms, leave a review. Continue the conversation over on social media. I'm active mostly on Twitter and Instagram. I try to pop into Reddit and Facebook now and then, certainly Reddit more so than Facebook, but yeah. And then of course, don't forget the Al's Place forums over at Al's Place, which is just, the premier Quantum Leap website, and has been for over 20 years. So head over to those forums. There's lots of great conversations happening over there as well. And check out what Quantum Leap Podcast has done. I know that obviously these last couple of episodes will be very special to them. I feel fortunate enough to have engaged in conversation with QLP over the weekend. We got the episodes at the same time, and we basically watched them at the same time. And it's been this kind of communal experience in many ways, and I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful for the work that they have done as well. So check out what they've had to say about these episodes also. But for now, it's time for me to leap out of here. It's a late night. It's already 11:13 p.m., and I've got some podcast editing to do so that all of this gets out on time following the episode tomorrow night. So with that in mind, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, stay safe out there, and remember, always, always leap responsibly. And maybe not alone.